Howdy. How's it going, Zeb? Good to see you. Your investment in Zebulon was $300,000, and driving the profit and everything we worked on. Was your investment in Zebulon worth it at this point?
Oh, 100%. I mean, from day one, it was worth it. I saw that, and like, I mean, yeah, there's some risks, right? With any investment, there's risk that maybe expectations don't play out. But very quickly, I was aware of just the confidence I felt as a business owner to have the support, guidance, and mentorship from you and your team was worth it 100%. Like one of the best investments I've made in the business was pursuing your support with our business.
All right, this has been an adventure. Oh, we start out wanting to do something by the river.
Yeah.
And then it just goes sideways. So
like exploring and adapting to the forest.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
There's where we can see what we got going on.
Awesome. I'm impressed that this is a pretty stellar setup, man.
There you go, it's upside down. But
okay, but that's good.
It'll work.
I like it. Sweet.
All right. Moses, thank you for joining on the Fireside Chat today.
Yeah. Looking forward to this stuff.
First in-person Fireside Chat. So
of many to come.
Many.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna, today what I like to go through is just the journey that you've had really basically since the inception of your business ownership when we first got started.
2019,
Was it?
I think so,
Yeah, just a young whippersnapper.
I was just flying solo at that point. And I remember reaching out to you and I'm like, Zeb, I want to work with you. And they're like, okay, let's circle back to this in a little bit. And when I think you were still getting sorted out back then too.
Yeah.
When I met you on Main Street.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like you had that upstairs office across from 11th Street Station.
Yeah.
I think that's the first opportunity we connected. I don't remember exactly how the connection was made initially, but I met you up in the office. They're like, okay, this is going to be a good thing. Let's circle back in like 6 months, and then here we are.
Cool.
6 years later.
So I'm going to give a little, just to give the viewers here a little bit of a context, kind of some of that growth, right? You know, you already acknowledged 2019 business started solo by yourself, and the business you have right now is a very different business.
It's not even the same,
Not even the same. So in context, and get into some of my cheat sheet notes that I got here.
I love it.
So people can understand like just the power and the weight of what's happened really from the last 5 years or so. So I looked back at 2020 because like that was the first full year you had. You started in 2019, partial year. So 2020 was your first full year. You ran at 150,000 in revenue. Okay, you're running solo, so your profit, and we're going to call this the net operating income number. Basically, the profit before owners paid was at 109,000. Okay, we had a $5,000 consult that year. And that was just like that. All right, well, let's do a little bit. Let's get Moses on the right track and connect shortly after. So we connected the next year in 2021, and the amount of growth you had between year 1 and year 2, you're at 305,000 in revenue. So 2x, literally 2x, just over 2x the revenue, and the profit was 188,000. Okay. This was the first year that you hired Caleb as well. And so that was a big step, right? You ran most of the year solo still, hired Caleb. I remember that initial hire, and it was concerning, but it was exciting.
It was a good next step. It was certainly a leap of faith to make that commitment to him and to myself within the business at that time. Like, am I going to have enough work? And can I create the systems I need to have someone feel stable and safe within my business? So that was a big year for that.
And I'm going to jump over. So we're going to go past 22 into 23, right? Because otherwise we could spend all time just literally talking year by year. But between 21 and 22, so over a 2-year time, you went from that 305 in revenue to 825,000. So over a 2x leap in revenue in a 2-year time period. That net operating income number was sitting at now 242,000, so just under $250,000. Our retainer and working with each other at that point was at 54,000, and you jumped to 13 employees.
Yep. Wow.
That was that year you started running like a real business.
Yeah, it was full on at that point. I was working independently of me. I think I was still looking at work during that time frame, just a little bit, still consulting, but that's where the culture was outpacing my influence a little bit.
Yep, and I think it was that year also. So prior to this point, we were looking at your duties and what was bogging you down and what you enjoyed and what you didn't enjoy. And in this time period, we ended up hiring Aaliyah to help up with some of the administrative stuff, staying on top of phone calls. You had Caleb still, Thomas stepped on, and you had actually started scaling out to a crew to get to the 13 people. With that, I think that was the year that we recognized the next delegation that needed to happen was training other people into sales.
Yep, 100%. I'd become so emotionally involved in it, put so much pressure on myself to close sales and to create a sustainable ecosystem for my employees that I was often pricing work emotionally and not necessarily. It was like, I need to win this job, whether we make any profit off of or not. I just need to get more work. I need to have people receiving consistent paychecks. I need to keep the system going. And so realized quickly the challenges that came with that. And that's where we both recognized the need to get someone else into that position to do that for me.
There's some other things that in this part and around this time period too, we really started diving into your ideal client profile. You already acknowledged wanting to just capture any kind of business from anybody, right? Driving literally all over town, just spending money, going down to Bayfield, over to Rafter J, up North Valley. You spent more time in the truck than you did in the trees.
It's true. Both on the sales side of it, having very long days of just commuting through town, which is a beautiful spot. It's not all bad. But really seeing the need to decrease our service area so we could provide the highest quality experience for those who want to invest in our business.
Let's dive into that one a little bit more thoroughly.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, I love it.
So the next jump that I'm going to go through from, so that was in 23. Now we're going to go up to 25, right? So in another 2-year time period, and this was last year, 825,000 to 1.5 million. Nearly a 2x jump in 2 years again. Okay. Net operating income is now at 300,000, so you crossed the 300K profit number at 14 employees. So we maintain that stable base, and the retainer that we've been working in for the last couple of years at this point was 88,000 a year, and accumulated at this point your investment in Zebulon was 300,000. So to go from 150,000 to 1.5 million, and driving the profit and everything we worked on. Was your investment in Zebulon worth it at this point?
Oh, 100%. I mean, from day one, it was worth it. I saw that. And there's some risks, right? With any investment, there's risk that maybe expectations don't play out. But very quickly, I was aware of just the confidence I felt as a business owner to have the support, guidance, and mentorship from you and your team was worth it 100%. One of the best investments I've made in the business was pursuing your support with our business.
Oh, thank 100%.
You. I mean that.
So
yeah. I couldn't do this, man. Being a business owner is hard. There are some challenging parts of it, and especially I didn't go to business school. I have always been kind of a crafty little business guy mowing neighbors' lawns and stuff, and felt like I was making pretty good money back walking dogs when I was in high school. But I had never been formally trained to be a business owner, and so to have that support and guidance and learning opportunity was a necessary step in the evolution of my knowledge and my confidence in pursuing something as risky as starting and owning a business.
During this time period from 2020 to last year, did you pursue any other kind of business education or curriculums or?
No, not formally. I mean, we would attend conferences that our industry would host, and maybe there's a little bit about business, but they weren't business conferences. So no, this is entirely on the Zebulon experience. I mean, no additional external influences aside from what you have offered.
You know, one of those things that I called out real fast too, and just doing this with other providers, is you've got the people that take the advice and run with it, and those that, you know, kind of just hear it and sit on it. And, you know, I attribute 100% of your growth to being willing to listen, applying everything we talked about. And sometimes it was just like, well, Moses, this is theoretical right now. Let's not get into this quite yet. And you'd be like, I'm doing it. Well, all right, bud.
It was always presented crawl, walk, run. I'm like, we're not crawling. We'll walk if we're tired, but we're in it to run it. I mean, like, this is a marathon, and like, I started off as a business owner with the sprint perspective, and I'm just going to sprint as long as I can. Hopefully everything falls into line and I can sustain that. But like that walk run, that's like the ultra marathon mindset of just like, this is 6 years of a 100-year-old business, and like, what decisions do we need to make now? How can we guide the trajectory so it's even more sustainable in the future? And so crawl, walk, run, I consider those 3 different pathways. So
You definitely lean towards the run.
Oh, I love it.
And even there, I remember there being times where Caleb, Thomas, and Cody too, the other manager that you brought in administratively, it'd be like, can we just take a slowdown year? And we were going to make last year a slowdown year for you. Slowdown years. And because they were just rocking at sales and all of the components to it, it didn't end up slowing down at all either.
Not at all. No, I think the reputation ensures success, and we celebrate the success within our administrative team, and we're supportive of our challenges when they arise, and there's no deviation of a long-term run.
So I'm going to give one more little segment of just kind of where we're at now and what's on the horizon for just this year. Okay. I'll put the numbers aside, and then we'll just get into literally talking more details on the journey, where you're at, where you've come from, where you're at, and where you're going to go.
Sweet.
So we're looking at our retainer being north of 120,000 this year. And so we've got some really, what I would say is kind of advanced level initiatives that we're going to get into. And the reason for that is what we're staring down the barrel of right now. So here's what we got for 2026. Okay. So at this point, our original goal, was 2.3 million revenue. So this is about 800,000 over last year. Last year's 1.5. This year our goal is 2.3. Last year's net profit was 300,000. This year we're anticipating 857,000. That was our original jump. So a $500,000 jump in profit. After our retainer. Year to date, so get these stats. I don't know if you know this or that yet. So year to date last year, you're at 460,000 and 25,000 profit, right? We're coming out of that winter season, coming into the summer season, the dry months, if you would. So far, and our goal to be on track for that 2.3 million was 704,000. So again, a significant jump over last year, but because of some changes and some off-season efforts, the net profits goal was going to be 200K year to date. So from basically break even to, almost your best historical net profit in the first 5 months. You ready for where we're actually at? So you're already at 881,000 revenue. You're already at 367,000 in profit. What I have projected, if we maintain this trajectory, will be around 3 million, maybe just shy of 3 million in revenue. So that's a 2x over last year in just a single year, from 1.5 million to 3 million revenue. But this is the real kicker. We're looking at probably anywhere between 1 to 1.5 million in net profit.
Wow.
My guess is we're going to fall in probably around the 1.2 to 1.3, depending on some of these advanced level initiatives that could very well be, again, distributions to employees and some other things that would drive that down a little bit, right? But that's intentional. That's a 5x increase over last year.
Wow.
So I just wanted to kind of let that settle in a little bit with where you're at right now. And these aren't fake numbers, right?
Yeah, no, they're not.
People
They're
listening on
real
screen
numbers.
are probably like, this is unrealistic and like pie in the sky stuff, but the journey since the beginning we thought was pie in the sky.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had lofty goals for the business, and ultimately it's a reflection of the energy maybe a business owner has to contribute, and I've put a lot of energy into it. So and we've set goals, and this is intentional. This isn't by surprise. I'm always a little bit surprised, like, wow, really? Okay, I'm always a little bit surprised, but like every step I've taken in this journey has put us into this trajectory.
Oh yeah. I mean, you've had your bumps and bruises. It hasn't been easy.
100%, yeah. But I think a lot of those have healed, and they're in the past. I mean, not to say we don't anticipate challenges in the future, but a lot of that was historical, just energy and time and learning investments. And I think we've gained a lot from those reflections, and here we are now.
So reflecting on the last, 6 years, 2019 to this year, I guess 7 years, what have been the most impactful things for you personally, professionally, as the business owner, and then for the business itself?
Great question. Let's see here. So most impactful is, I think that mindset of like doing it alone to having an opportunity to have support, and recognizing early on that I need support, and if I'm going to be successful in this and sustain it and survive it, then I'm going to need support. So drawing on that early and being very intentional about seeking that as I continue to grow. And so that's like bringing you and your team on very early in the process. I need support. I don't know how to do the business part of it, to like, I need support. I need the crew part of it. And I need support in the sales side of it. So we need to bring our consultants in, need support in the administrative side. So I think it's like ultimately recognizing I need help and like acting on that and creating a, very intentional network of people that can like kind of hold me as like a safety net. Like I can make impulsive decisions. I can like kind of just do it by feel. And then there's this like ecosystem around me that just kind of makes sure I'm safe in that plan. So, I mean, that's a big part of it. And like being rooted in education is a huge part of it as well. I mean, demonstrating professionalism, industry leading certifications, and our commitment to growing as a business has helped a ton in that as well. And then my responsibilities move more from day-to-day task into guiding and leading our team. And now my responsibility, now I've learned how to be supported, I'm offering support to those people in their journeys as well. So I think ultimately that's the evolution and why we're here now. And so
you acknowledge education, right? The support. So support in that through this time period. I'm not in the grind, with the business with you. I'm not emotionally tied to you. We connected at the very beginning of it with our multi-vision exercise, right?
Yep.
What is it that you want for the business? What do you want for you personally? What do you want financially for yourself as well as for the business, right? And then back then I actually called it the ideal life and the ideal business. Remember that?
Yeah.
And we articulated, and you put in the details. It was like, I want to be able to like still sit under the trees and look at the sky and like enjoy it. And education was important to the community and everything else, right? So we casted that, and I remember you saying, I remember putting into it like, what do you want in that 3 to 5 years? And it was like at that 3-year mark, we pulled it up and we read it, and you're just like, this is nuts. This is exactly what we described.
Oh, totally. Yep. And so that's where it's been very helpful. Like, I think there's kind of a foggy future of owning a business, of just what is it going to be without intentionality. It could be any direction. And I think the long-term goals and doing the multi-vision and being very intentional about what direction I'm heading and what direction I want the business to head, kind of set up the steps to get there. I mean, the goal setting is a big part of that journey for sure. And it was a treat to look back at those goals and just check them off one by one, often just like exceeding anticipated growth. And it was just really cool to see.
And so that was started out when it was just you, right?
Yeah.
In continuation of the education and the people you're talking about, bringing people in, the multi-vision now, as we've created it, isn't just about you and your interests, but bringing in the interests of your key managers,
100%.
Thomas, Caleb, Cody, right? As well as providing an environment in the education world, which is the Eddy. So the multi-vision is one of the Eddy exercises. They're involved within the multi-vision. And then we'll get into some of that other key curriculum, but how has been bringing those guys into the fold for you?
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. Well, they get a taste of being a business owner, which is awesome. And they have more employee buy-in, more responsibility, more contributions to what they want it to be. And so I think that opportunity for sense of ownership, which I feel is often lacking inside of modern work environments, isn't present in our business. Like, they're leading from their hearts, they're contributing, like, we're creating a system that works and is sustainable for them, of a ton of support and guidance along the way, so they can feel safe taking risk within our business ecosystem and growing in their skill sets. And so it's been really incredible to begin including them on those educational opportunities. And then like the Eddy meeting's done, and then we're talking about it. It's like there's transference and there's growth, and very interesting to watch as a business owner. Because first and foremost, like, I'm here to I'm in a leadership role, and I'm here just to guide the rocket ship, and it's going, and I can maybe tug it one way or the other, but there's no stopping it at this point. And so it's been really cool to see them in the driver's seat a little bit more, and putting it in the direction they want to go. So, yeah.
And also with them being in the driver's seat, we were talking about this on our walk over, is it's like you end up hiring somebody to make a delegation, and then you get some of that stuff delegated, but real quick the business starts transforming, and we find ourselves kind of, baking as owners, baking ourselves in other roles as it's needed by the team and everything else. So where some stresses get put to the side, other ones tend to pop up.
It's true. Yeah. And I think I go back and forth from whether that's a healthy or an appropriate task, and certainly I have lots of energy. I like being part of the team. I don't know if I can necessarily fully step back. I want to be part of this experience. And so, if I could take those tasks and responsibilities so other people have more room to develop their specialties and grow where they need to, then that's a wonderful contribution I can offer. So
thinking on some of the other curriculum, right? You've been in the Eddy for 3, maybe even going on 4 years now. Yeah, you've been a part of it since it started, and your team's been involved into it. So we talked about the multi-vision. We also have like the strengths assessments. We've got the Q12 that's coming up, the employee grading, the mentorship, mastering mentorship, which was a new one this last year. Thinking on some of those other ones, which one of them have been most impactful for you and your organization?
Oh, great question. Well, they all... I don't want to just say they all contribute equally, but they certainly have influence in their own special needs. Like, I need to know the pulse of my team so I know where to invest time, energy, and effort to growth. So I need that. And I need the curriculum to put the foundations behind why and when I need to make decisions. And employee grading, I need to be aware of when I can reward people for their hard work and where I need to support. And so I would hate to just put a blanket over. They all have equal contribution, but they do all serve their own specific needs within the business. So
and timing wise, we've created that calendar momentum. Okay, not the quote unquote outfitter or adventure tourism, right? But your business has so many parallel similarities.
100%.
The seasonality, literally the same people who you employ seasonally are working up at the mountain and doing winter sports. So culturally, it's very similar. The people as consumers are all the same. They want more value than what they're paying, and there's the trade-off where consumers are people regardless of where it's at. So, the tree expert service line is very very indifferent than the broader audience.
Yeah.
Okay. So I say that kind of layering that in when we're talking about the cadencing, what you're talking about with the layering to it. End of a summer season, we have the SWOT analysis, the historical review. Then we go into multi-vision, we go into strengths assessments, we get into delegation, mastering mentorship, and everything layers on top of each other. Then by the time we get into the season, which you're in right now, we're going to have our Q12 form, we're going to have the employee grading, and it's more hands-off for you guys. But it derives incredible information from the employee base that we can then glean from when we're setting up, the next year's plans, the next year's staffing, the next year's delegation efforts based on the data we accumulate now. So I appreciate hearing it all carries weight because it's all intentionally structured and it layers on top of each other.
It's been cool to see that curriculum evolve, and it always is. Each year, like I can see how your team has been growing from those educational resources as well, and I've seen the Eddy evolve year after year, I'm just aware that it's not just the repetitive information. Like there's an evolution of your curriculum, and it's been really fun to see that as well. And it by no means feels repetitive. I mean, there's growth in that resource.
And you're learning something every year.
Every time I sit in there, I'm learning something. And if it's not 100% new, it's a real good reminder that I probably should focus on exactly that. I mean, and so.
It's part of that 100-year business you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
In 100 years, you're not going to find anything new under the sun. It's just leaning into what works well and stepping away that doesn't. And what's so cool about the Eddy is it's about the people, right? Training your managers and training you to be solid leaders and managers within your organization. Putting business structure to a non-business industry, right? But in a way that's simple, interpretive, applicable, easy to apply, but not over the top.
No, not at all. I think you do such a good job of providing the structure of a heavier concept or bigger concepts, and then really getting down on how we can approach that easily and getting into it, and that's the crawl, walk, run, and we have our baby goals and our medium goals and our lofty goals. I think there needs to be crawl, walk, run, sprint. Let's get a fourth one in there. But yeah, it's been really cool to just, there's always, every time I have employees in on that, it's just you can see just bells turning, gears turning, and it's been really cool. Yeah.
Well, and like you said, they even come to you afterwards and you guys continue the conversation, right? You have an incredible culture.
Yeah,
right.
I've worked very hard on that. It's the most important part of my business. Yeah,
absolutely. And when we were going through those years, one of those years that we jumped between where it was 13 to 14 employees, there was 18 employees in the year in between. That was a tough year.
That was a hard year. I probably overhired. Or I didn't have the right people in the right spot, so we had to compensate by putting 2 people in that spot, and that was a big learning year.
And so that was one of those first years that came into the Eddy, right? And so then we started looking at, we sent out the customer surveys. We got insight into where the customer base, or not your customer, but your employee base was, struggling in effectively. We got visibility into where you as an organization were struggling to support them. And then we did the employee grading right after, and we saw those qualities and traits that were really, as we call it in the Eddy, the bickering biddies, that were kind of pulling things down. So we did some pruning of the herd. We leaned into some of those better employees. We leaned into those responses we got out of our Q12 survey. And almost within the year, from my perspective, felt like the culture shifted to be a tighter unit and more geared towards what you were trying to accomplish than them just basically pulling you along.
That's 100% it. That was a big transition year. And a necessary step in being a business owner. If we're developing a culture and there's part of it that's not nurturing and that's not thriving, then it's important to look at why that's happening. And if it's simply a matter of refocusing energy into the part of the culture that needs that nurturing and growth and like really beginning to bloom that, then that's the most important part I can offer as a business owner, 100%. And that's where like now, I mean, this is the best culture I've ever had in the business. It's very humbling to come into it and be like, well, do you guys even need me anymore? Like, I'm happy to like contribute. Like I was cleaning the mirrors on the truck this morning and like the whole thing is running without me. I'm like, I guess I'll go clean the mirrors on the truck. But then they're like, wow, sometimes I get in here, I just don't know why the mirrors are so clean. So I got a good shout out. This is why the mirrors are clean. Like, okay, cool. So
I jumped into the strategy meeting that you and Robert had a couple weeks ago, and you were telling me how you guys started your day, and how did the day turn out? You guys started playing a game?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm trying to integrate just in my personal life, trying to like just blur the work play and like, why does there have to be such a black-white work play environment? And so like my personal work in life is just kind of getting that play going a little bit more and being a little more intentional about playing. And so finding gray areas, we call it plurking, which is play and work combined, and we try to plurk as much as possible. But I started off the morning with a heavy conversation like, this isn't going to be easy, and we're going to have to keep it within the space here, and people are might have to take a risk. It's going to be challenging. Everyone thought it was about to be a really heavy conversation. I was just like, tag, you're it. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, had the whole team jumping over trucks, climbing on top, just like freeze tag all over the place. And it was a real treat. And so just want to like bring it back. Like work doesn't have to be so heavy. I mean, I get there's days that are, but I think it's very intentional to keep play in the work environment. And so, yeah, focusing on that a little bit more.
I definitely need to glean and learn from you in that case. I've been heavy on the team from our end. It's like I just get into those patterns and those zones. And you know that from that business owner, there's some extra stresses. And covering that payroll and seeing from afar, it's like the weight is there, but separating that weight from them too. I have a bang up team. I mean, they're awesome and incredible as well. Every one of them, Corey, Kayla, Robert.
I vouch. I vouch for that.
It's and you know, teamwork. Learning from our experience is like, Moses, lean into your teamwork. Zeb, lean into your teamwork.
And like now I have Thomas and Caleb just being like, oh, like sometimes I come into work stressed out. There's always those days. And like Thomas is very intentional about like, hey, like this doesn't need to go into the culture. We can talk about this on the administrative side, but like I've been really focused more on like keeping that a little closer to me. Like they don't need to know this job was a total bomb and this client's a headache. Like just keep it fun and exciting and low stress for them. Because I mean, with any industry, there's burnout. Tree care is a hard job and there's a lot of inherent risk. And we're like industrial athletes are pushed to our limits often. And making sure that it's as light as possible so they can leave work at work and fully feel recharged when they get back from the weekend is super important for me. So
I'm gonna pause this real quick and we'll get back into it.
Sweet.
All right, some mechanical changes on the computer, the complexities of an outdoor environment. Hopefully we can line that up a little bit. Anything you want to just kind of continue rolling with, riffing with?
Let's see here. The culture is the most important part of the business. But I mean, what's been really interesting as a business owner, where the culture used to be entirely connected to me, I've learned to kind of relinquish that little bit of ego and allow the culture to take its own form. And what I've found is that like, maybe it can be more vibrant without me leading it. And it can be, like people's contributions can have more influence without me kind of being the old tree in the center of the forest, kind of like stepping out of the way and just seeing more and more just growth on their end. So yeah, fun to think about.
So what is it right now? Like if you were to pinpoint it on something, what do you think is the core of why your culture is where it's at right now?
That's a great question. We've put a lot of energy into it. I've created an environment where people can feel safe with who they are as individuals, can come in tired and maybe needing a little bit of support for a team. But I think I've created and have been working this entire time to create an environment where people can take safe risk and have a safety net there if something doesn't quite go as planned. And so I think that's largely it. And when people can feel safe at work, they can be themselves, and then there's less kind of masking and projecting out into the world of maybe not who they really are, which takes a lot of energy and seems inauthentic and isn't sustainable. So then there's burnout. But yeah, I would probably say that. And then having strong leaders. I mean, when we're working with our team and I'm leading my team, I'm teaching them how to take on those contributions and roles and responsibilities of leadership. And so they see their influence, which is a big part of it as well. So,
last year there was a little bit of a bind that we uncovered during our strategy calls when we were kind of looking at finances. You were behind where we wanted to be income-wise. Sales were always strong, but it was just like the bank account wasn't growing the way you wanted to. The net income wasn't where we had it, and there was a little bit of a call out that we had with Thomas and with Caleb, and it ended up being because the staff was sitting on the clock for too long, and it was within the flexibility and that fun space that you had. There just wasn't the accountability to keeping, I don't want to say margins tight, but the key number we looked on was gross profit, right? Your revenue less the cost of sales, the time on the job, the structuring of the jobs, the number of staff on the jobs, and it was a prospectively challenging conversation to have with everybody. How did that go?
It went really well. Mainly, I wasn't leading that conversation. So, I mean, it went really well. I mean, and staff has changed over a little bit since then. I think our team that we have now sees the goal, the dream, the vision. I support their goals, dreams, and vision as well. And so I think that's changed a ton. We were at a point where we were developing equipment resources. And so we were trying to maximize equipment that may not have been best for the job. I was kind of caught in a startup mindset of overstaffing. So a lot of it was self-inflicted pain. I mean, I'll take responsibility for that 100%. The culture just wasn't mature for where it needed to be a high-functioning, high-performance team. And so, I mean, it's easy to just kind of point to they're taking time too long of a lunch or whatever it may be. But it's really, it's an internal thing. I may not be offering the support where it's needed. So these are the situations of how it plays out. Okay. So I wouldn't put that necessarily on the team. Although, yeah, sir, there's always a little bit of just, come on, pushing down the trail a little bit. But yeah.
I remember that conversation too with Caleb and Thomas and Cody being in the room also, is it was they wanted the best interest because they wanted to get to those income goals as well. But to, think about that, how do we hybrid, the impacts and the benefits of profitability from debt pay downs and asset acquisitions, all of the stuff in the multi-vision, and then the reality being we've got to make some corrective changes. And then there was a little bit of a kind of, there was never really a conflict in those rooms. But it was just kind of getting through these struggles on how are we going to tackle this issue. One, recognizing that it's our lead that is causing this issue, or maybe even absence or whatever else. It was just maybe a lack of awareness. It wasn't like anybody was causing a problem, but it was just leading into something that was left unaddressed. That was kind of like that elephant in the room. That's what we were calling it. We call it the elephant in the room. It's the elephant in the room. We were struggling with these other issues. The elephant in the room was that the margin on the gross profit wasn't tight enough. Anyways, I just went through all of that. But then it was, okay, we have to fix this problem. And the awkwardness of fixing this problem.
I mean, it's opportunities for growth. I mean, with any reflection that we determined there needed to be a change here, and we looked at it intentionally and we grew to satisfy that goal or that change that was needed. And then then it happens. I mean, I think a lot of it too is like, as I place more responsibility onto those who may not have had those in their past, they need their space to learn. And so as much as I'd like to overlay, like, we always call it punching widgets in this industry, like, we're not punching widgets. Like, these are complex challenges that we need to develop a specific set of skills. That's where the Eddy backed that up. Cool. Like, I got my leaders to learn about those subtleties, and now they can support the production team with those subtleties, and we can educate the administrative team so they can educate our clients with those subtleties. And that goes a long ways. So I mean, there's always going to be an ebb and flow of efficiency and profitability and success, and I think it's important to offer that space that people can grow and learn in a pace that suits them. Sometimes we have to like infuse a bunch of knowledge, just get them into the Eddy, but like we have to allow that space and attribute largely that to the learning style they need, whether that's hands-on or in classroom work or just the support needed. So
as you're describing that, it's reminding me just as little tiny tweaks, a few of the little tiny tweaks we make throughout the year, right? So in the strategy meetings and in the financial side of working with each other, we've got the Eddy, but then we have the one-on-one applications for your business. Get together, look at kind of where numbers are at, look at the progress on the goals we're talking about, brainstorming, next level initiatives, whether that be like a marketing focused one that we did with Cody, the email marketing kind of things, or recognizing that there was a break within the sales flow, that there was leads dropping off in sales conversations. And so putting within the process a immediate callback, not just an immediate callback, but like a follow-up within 2 days later. We recognized that there was a break. If a client didn't hear back from us within a 4-day time period, the close rate dropped significantly. So there were little tiny tweaks in that process because of those strategy meetings, because of that continued connection, because of keeping the eye on the prize, that then Cody was incredible in just applying and like baking into the system right away too. It's been really cool to see that. And even just this week, Cody set up a meeting with our administrative team, and so Brittany and Aaliyah and Thomas and Caleb and I were there. And I interjected just a couple key little like, hey, well, maybe we should look at it this way. It was entirely running without me. I was there at the table, but it was on Cody's initiative, and Thomas and Caleb and Aaliyah and Brittany, they're all sorting out the little details, and it was really, really cool to see that and be part of that still. I'm glad I'm invited to those meetings, but it was really cool to see it take that next evolution, and them like talking about their sales schedules and what our consultants need and how the office team can support them, and then how I can support both of those teams. Just really working on that synergy mindset. Really sweet. And they're the ones innovating and coming up with initiatives. Oh, way better than you. Way better than what I can offer. Cool. So it is super sweet. It was a real treat to be a part of that. All right, so I want to shift from talking culture and the people and your team dynamics. And I want to focus a little bit on the business things that have evolved, right? So one of the most pivotal initiatives that I'd say you and I went through, especially in that third year, right? Kind of one of those things right before we got to that 800,000 mark. And we mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but was the customer. So we did our typical customer analysis that I work clients through, looked at your customer base, 80-20'd them, look for those 20% of your audience that produced 80% of your benefit revenue in that case. We isolated different neighborhoods. We isolated client profiles. Orchards was one of them, tree care, tree restoration, throughout neighborhoods that were just basically not producing well for you. Hard conversations and saying, Moses, you got to step away from this client base and get after these other ones, right? Let's talk about that journey a little bit. That was a good journey to go on. I mean, as a business, what's that? And pricing. Pricing. That's another big journey to go on. I mean, I had a lot of bad habits starting.
I was outgrowing the habits I needed to form when starting the business. And so like those probably would have been sustainable if it was just me and my dog Ruthie in the front seat of the truck, and like I could pull that off. It may have sustained me in that limited growth journey. Found very quickly that connecting with people who really valued our service kind of filled our hearts more. We could contribute more to their landscape and provide and demonstrate our best services. And so when we went through that exercise of tightening the belt a little bit in our service area, one, we saw a direct relationship with amount of time spent on the clock, the amount of risk and time spent on the road environment, which is totally crazy these days, and the amount of wear and tear on the truck, the fuel and all of that. My time spent driving back and forth to all these jobs to look at them, to maybe get them or not, because they weren't necessarily the right fits for us, but I'm going to look at anybody's work who calls us. And so tightening that belt, determining the very specific neighborhoods and clients we want to go after, ultimately finding the people who trust us. I mean, there's a lot of distrust in the business world, and with good reason. There's a lot of dishonest businesses out there. To find people that trust us, that we can build a relationship with, was a big step in the right direction. Not to say those people didn't exist in the kind of periphery of our service area. Now we can seek them, and they're just a little bit closer to home, which is nice. If we get something at the shop, we can just run back. Less exposure and time on the road infrastructure. And so that was a big step. And like moving away from the startup mindset, I was historically caught in pricing that felt really good as a sole operator and single employee of the business. Found very quickly that even the addition of workman's comp and having paying sustainable living wages, which has always been a very important goal of mine. I want to make sure people can thrive. If the sea rises, all ships rise with it. I'm very intentional about that and have evolved that quite a bit. I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point. But pushing pricing that didn't nurture the business's growth and our trajectory to the side as well. And largely that's getting Thomas and Caleb in as consultants. And they're doing a really good job because they're not as emotionally invested in that. They can look at the work strategically and from a formulative mindset, and we can price our work fairly and accurately for the expectations we're looking to serve. And so just to put numbers in context, right? Yeah. Sole operator starting at the beginning of this, and I think this is true for a lot of people who don't put any intentional work behind pricing, looking at what competitive rates are, average job, I remember seeing $150 tickets. Right? So $150 tickets, it was like, trying to ask for $500, you were like, people aren't going to take this, there's no way. And then I was like, Moses, we're going to get you up to $1,500 a job. And you're just like, the gasp that happened with like $1,500. It was like, I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be turned down. I'm not going to have enough business. However, when we started isolating the right target audiences, right, we started narrowing down on the neighborhoods. We started narrowing down on the service offers. The communication became easier. The referrals that came in was easier. You could put just intentional nurture on key areas, have a bang up job at $1,500 and, tell that story. Then we crossed the $3,500 a job threshold. And I think that was around that time period where we were like $2,500, $3,500 a job. Components doing very similar to work to what you were doing at $150 a job, right? And again, competitively, there's nobody else charging that. Like you're head and shoulders above everybody 100%. Else. But you're so much more above that people perceptually saw you and was like, there's something different about this. And people sought that. We've lost customers along the way, but for good reason. You've intentionally dropped a handful. And even just, I think last strategy call, you said you walked into an engagement and got rid of your biggest paying client ever, and it felt incredible. I'm so happy. I'm so happy I have the confidence and stability in my business that I can let relationships go that no longer serve us. And that didn't come without a great deal of nurturing and attempt. That wasn't an easy decision. It was the first time that's ever happened, and it was with we had consensus, and it was the best move and decision for everyone involved. And we talked about as an entire team, even down to the frontline workers, talked about whether this is the appropriate decision to make. And we offered opportunities for resolution. We did all of the nurturing. We offered perspective, everything I possibly could do, and then saw that this is an energy deficit. And although there's the temptation of income, which is certainly tempting as a business owner to not just pursue income for the sake of income, we determined that it was an energy drain for us as a business, and that's not where we want. We want to be high energy. And so now work is being priced very well, and I think speaks fairly. It's not overpriced. It speaks fairly to the level of expertise and the quality of experience we bring. I mean, people are buying the experience of tree work.
I remember us chatting about that. It was like,
it.
They're not buying just, the work done on the trees, but the professionalism from answering the phone calls from the beginning, getting to talk with the gals on the office, loving that. Like Cody, not even being an arborist, has learned so much about arborists and everybody else that they're answering phone calls. They're answering questions on the phone calls, which is establishing tremendous amounts of trust. Your guys' vehicles, we uniformed, really great, sharp uniforms, incredible equipment, clean-esque. You show up professional, you leave the job timely, cleaned up, and everything is just polished from start to finish. And that customer perspective on the experience is where you're getting multiples on the dollar. And now I can't remember what the average ticket price was that we were going for, but we're talking about $4,500. You have a handful of contracts well above that.
Oh, I mean, we had a $18,000 a day a week or two ago. So and it's like, and
could you believe like when you first started this, that you'd have an $18,000 a day?
I wouldn't have believed it in the moment, but I knew we were working towards that. And it's the team. Like I am maybe sitting in the driver's seat a little bit, but like I see it as we have 12 driver's seats and everyone's getting to drive their own little part of the ship. And it's the team that ensures that, and everyone's contribution that gets it so far beyond me. It's them. So it's like coming back to that. I mean, like I can tug the ship one way or another, but they're driving.
I remember one more final thing, kind of just the pricing and the customers, right? I remember when Thomas and Kaylin were starting to get into that sales arborist role, and I was doing coaching with them on sales training and just, like the presentation of the sale and the flow of the sale. And there was a downturn that was happening like last year when the tariff scare happened, and they wanted a discount. There's concern about, like, there's pressures in the housing. People are people are stepping back. And it was like, this is the time to increase those price points and lean more into your guys' systems. They doubted it. Obviously, sales ended up doing better than what was expected because that's what you guys continue to do. But, tell me kind of their growth, going through that challenge and, recognizing that if they sacrifice on that price point, they're sacrificing, compensation effectively. And it's tricky. And so I think in an unstable world, people will find like opportunities to connect with stability. And so we want to be a stable business. We want the forest to be stable. We want our team to be stable. We want just a good foundation for people to connect with. And I think largely, and we talk about it even this week, we're talking about, should we adjust pricing? No, we're going to remain stable and consistent in our pricing because what we have to offer hasn't changed. Like if anything, it's even better than the way we're like pricing our work. And so the quality of our pruning and removal, the equipment we can contribute, the education, the team, everyone that's part of the business ecosystem hasn't changed. We're not in a different place because there's economic uncertainty. And so we're going to remain stable in that. And like now that we're, 6 years into the business, we're developing back balances and cash flow in a predictable and sustainable manner. We can be confident in that approach where like historically as a new business owner, I'd just turn that pricing way down. I would just contribute free tree work essentially or break even. And
and that would have been necessary, but now there's no separation from that. So
I'm reading through a book right now, but it was one of the Eddy members. Kevin suggested I go ahead and read it, talking about sales, and it's really cool because I haven't read this book before, but he's echoing a lot of the same things that I've said over the years with our audience. So it's kind of affirming on that. But like he calls out, when you end up reducing your price, the customer doesn't benefit and the business doesn't benefit, right? Because those higher price points is what drives profitability, which is what drives your ability to grow and develop and invest in stronger team members, right? Profit is what drives the investment in a positive culture. You start discounting, one, you're removing the psychological investment from the consumer. At a smaller price point, they're less invested. They're not going to take it as seriously. They're not going to follow through. They're not going to think as highly of it. They're not going to anticipate it. And you end up struggling because now you're making sacrifices, cuts and safety and all those other kinds of things. So the customer doesn't benefit. Yeah, their bank account might be a little bit better, but they're not going to take it as seriously as, $150 job versus a $1,500 job, $1,500 job versus a $15,000 job. You get them to pay that $15,000 up front, they're going to take it more seriously. And you drive the funding to continue to grow and develop your team. Pay down debts, purchase new assets, pay yourselves as owners. We're going to get into that one here too.
That one. Okay.
So anyways, just kind of side.
On 100%. And it's challenging in a discounted economy. It's challenging not to fall into those grocery store style discounts and but we're intentional about that. And if we do need to adjust pricing, we want to match people's budgets. I mean, I'm running a business, but I also really like tree work, and we want people's trees to be happy, and we want people to invest in their landscapes. And so if we need to look at pricing, then we're going to make adjustments and reprioritize and focus on the immediate needs. And then we can always circle back to that second treatment plan. So I'm very strategic about that.
So on that treatment plan, right? And I think one of those things that is stimulating why the margins are going to be so strong this year is innovation, adoption of new efforts, right? Earlier we talked about not going to key locations. We talked about employee management on jobs, gas time, all that kind of things. But there's been these tree care treatments. Now they're not sexy, they're not glorious, they're not fun. However, it continues the relationship with the client. You do all this incredible work. You get opportunity to show up and be present with them, nurture the relationship. Super high margins because you show up for just a couple hours and get some pretty good change out of it, right? So, over time, getting rid of the stuff that hasn't served yet and leaning more into the stuff that's serving the customer better and serving your business better.
Yep, that's exactly it. And that's just an important step as we grow our business. I mean, in the tree work world, if they only have a chainsaw, then the only thing they're going to do is cut the tree with the chainsaw. We look to provide that whole experience. And thinking about to the rafting population, I mean, like every outfitter has a boat, but what's going to separate you from that experience? And I think there's so much of that, of like, how can we provide excitement and just joy with the services that can offer? How can we keep the tree healthy? How can we do whatever we can to keep very important trees from being removed in the landscape, or stand out above and beyond with our approach has been really important this year. And it's been a treat for me. I get to go back out on the job sites and connect with clients who have now become Thomas and Caleb's clients, and I get to see them and connect and see awesome tree work, and it's pretty fun.
So side tangent.
One
of the outfitters in the Eddy, Brian, owns Wilderness Aware.
Right. Is that just on the other side of the bridge on the Arkansas?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Wilderness Aware rafting.
Yeah. You have a little history there, huh?
I do, yeah. So, I mean, I am a tree worker, but my entire educational background is in outdoor education. So I was a guide for many years, climbing and caving and rafting guide on the Nantahala in Pisgah National Forest, and lived in Leadville and did the Knolls and Outward Bound thing. And so, but yes, so I did a swiftwater rescue course, and I still remember to this day, it was so cold, and we're in 3 mil wetsuits, and they're handing out wool sweaters and we still had to jump in. It was like just the freshest snow melt that the Arkansas River probably offers year round. And we were swimming drills across the river underneath the bridge in Johnson Village. And we were all like shivering and trying to sit in the classroom. And we were given these wool sweaters that were soaking wet after we went swimming in them. But yeah, so. And I developed in that class, I developed an awareness of mechanical rigging for boat flipping and extraction from strainers, and I'd say that was a contributor in my evolution into coming towards the more rope-heavy tree work side of life.
Cool.
So I'll have to say there's a little bit of a root back there. Yeah.
And the decisions we make and the routes we take. It's
right.
funny how they layer on each other.
It was like snow melt and it was snowing, and then here's this box of wet sweaters.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
So another shift in gears one more time. So that's kind of where we've evolved from, right? We've pretty some good history, covered a lot of different topics. You know, what's the immediate for Moses and for Momentum?
Great question. Immediacy. That's kind of for me, an often overlooked area. It tends to be past and future, but immediacy is working to continue the support and growth of those who support me. And so that's an immediacy for me and something involved in our current experience. Finding ways and being told ways I need to step back from the administrative team, and focusing more on what I enjoy doing. I mean, like this week, I was climbing a big, beautiful broadleaf cottonwood, kind of like the one above us here, and it was a real treat. I got to be out there with the crew. We had a 6-person team with our new wood chipper and our fancy little track spider lift. We had, I was climbing one side of the tree. We had to lift in another, and another tree climber working, and the most incredible ground team I've ever watched, kind of scurrying around trying to keep up with everything happening above. And so now, my goal is to just insert myself into what brings me joy in the business. And sometimes that's administrative work. I was building proposals today, and I still like that too. And I was doing plant health care, and there are some times where it feels a little bit monotonous or not as exciting as the tree work or production tree work world. But I find enjoyment in that as well. And connecting our administrative team this week over dinner was a real treat as well. So basically focusing on inserting myself into the places that bring me joy, supporting the growth of my team as well. And knowing that sometimes as a business owner, I can feel separated from the frontline experience, but also offering my contribution and support and check in and continue to build relationships with the front side and the forward facing side of the business. So, yeah.
Last summer, I think it was last summer, maybe even 2 summers ago, we had a big push and initiative for that delegation.
Yeah.
So that you could take a honeymoon with your wife. You guys have been married for years.
It's true.
You wanted to go on a summer vacation because she's a teacher, which summer is your peak season. So that was a big step.
That's a very big step.
And you did.
Yep, and I did. Yep, and we planned it for a long time, and I just did everything I could to support them. And we did even, I remember, based on your suggestion, we did a little test flight where I was still in town. I mean, I was going to Japan, so I would have been on the other side of the world 15 hours in the future, and so there's no phone calls or anything that I can help with. And so we even did a little test flight, okay, this is how you guys do everything. Here's all the keys. Here's how you make payments. Just keep it going, and did a little test flight. I was still in town and kind of stepped back from the business. I'd kind of wait for everyone to leave, and I'd come in and do my little thing. And then what ended up happening is we had the record month of the entire business's lifespan. In the month I was gone. Yeah, and we still joke about that. And they still are like, hey, maybe you should take a month off. I don't know. It's hard to do.
They don't want you to, though.
But they saw that, and I was very proud of them and the team, and couldn't have done that without them. And when I was there, certainly a thought or two of like, hope everything's going all right, came into my mind, but no one reached out the entire time. And I got back and everything was perfectly. A couple little embers kind of poking around in the forest that needed some attention, but by no means anything outside of what would have normally happened within the business. And so it was just a clear demonstration for me. And it's funny, I was shown that, I saw that, was shown that, and still as a business owner feel like I need to be a little bit more interjection, like a little bit more present. But maybe that's work I need to do. Like maybe that's a part of me that I need to let go and kind of hand the keys and hand the system to them. And
let's work on that together.
Let's work on that.
All right,
okay,
deal.
Cool. Because and it's hard. I mean, I do enjoy being part of the team, and like I do love tree work, and I do like big trucks and chainsaws and all of that fun stuff. And so, but I mean, like my growth, I need to evolve and focus on other portions of my life that. As a business owner, I haven't been able to give as much attention to as I know it deserves. So, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about like the financial and like the owner comp and stuff, right? And so it has been growing. You've been doing a lot of reinvestment into the business, a lot of asset purchases and stuff. So much to the point where you're getting attention, like you're drawing attention from private equity and from lucrative buyers that want to come in and purchase you, and you've been presented some good things. So
stellar deals.
Where do you stand currently when it comes to the prospect of either selling or you worked so hard at this point?
That's a great question, and one that would keep a fella up at night sometimes just thinking about it. I mean, it's I don't want to detract from all of the hard work and attention I've put into this. And I want it to be mine, and I need it to be mine. And like, I love that it's an ecosystem of business that kind of is my vision, and where everyone can have influence and contributions, and we can keep it more organic in form and not be top-down managed. I'm not a top-down manager. I mean, I'm right there. I'll be out on the job sites, and maybe I'll be the person who moves the little woods around. And like, I don't want to be a managed top-down. I don't want to be a top-down manager. I really work towards equality within the business ecosystem. And so, it's interesting perspective to think about. Like, you have a really good thing going, 100%. And it doesn't mean that there are days that are hard, that are like, we all, as business owners, we all know those days. We're like, here's the keys, I'm done with this. Like, this was fun and shiny, and now it's just a dirty old toy. And like, maybe I need to look for a new toy or something new to focus on in life. And so, ultimately, like in that scenario, what I'm presented with is like, I have the power to make that decision. It's not out of desperation. It's not like, I'm in over my head. Here, just take this, I can't do this anymore. Like, I have the systems developed. I have the people we want to work for as part of our business. I'm working with people I like to work with as part of our business, and feel very confident in that. And so, and so that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, and it's exciting to have perspective interest. And one thing I always come back to is like, they're interested in the business as an entity, not in what we do. And like, in my experience, like, work very hard to create something very specific to what we do. We put in tree swings, we make bird habitat, we leave wildlife spars. We're very creative in our approach. We're like artists, and we have a beautiful canvas to work on, people who let us just have the paintbrush to do what we think is best, and don't want to let that go. And so, so it's kind of listening right these days.
It's a piece of you guys. And I've been in conversation with Thomas and Cody. I haven't been able to see Caleb much this year because he was out all winter long. But in those recent conversations with those guys, they fully support you in whatever the decision is that they make. There's also kind of that scare and concern that corporate's going to come in and change things. This last strategy meeting that, I sat in, and we were able to just connect you, Robert, and myself. we kind of laid out some of those numbers because a big driver to this is the financial unknowns as a business owner. It can always turn. We know that we could be throwing money into it. There can be years where we sacrifice and lose to it. But with the offer that they provide you, and so, for example, we were talking about being like $1 million, right? You basically get $1 million in your pocket, and then from here on out, you'll be compensated on W-2 and insurance and all of this.
Yep.
You're about to net about $1 million this year.
Yeah.
Right? Now, not all will go straight to your pocket. However, keeping money simple. So they pay you $1 million now. You still get, to take a salary, but you don't get the freedom. You don't get the creativity. It's anticipated.
Yeah.
The team doesn't necessarily like it. Again, they'll support you, whatever.
Yeah.
But this year, you net that $1 million.
Yeah.
Next year, you net that $1 million.
Yeah.
So you keep your business just for 2 years, you've already doubled the money that they're going to pay you.
100%.
You keep it for 3 years, you tripled it. And with your growth plan, you're going to have a higher payout. So the financial side, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And we've kind of came to that conclusion.
100%. And like what puts confidence behind that direction is having the support I need from you guys and from the team to get there. I mean, if I didn't have a team, I didn't have you guys, sure, I'd take it. There you go, buddy. Then cash out. But because it is just, as a business owner, it can be very challenging day in, day out to sustain it. And so, the opportunity to have decision in an opportunity like this comes from the support network that I've been very intentional about creating and that I feel supported by. It's one thing to create a support network, maybe of advisors who don't always have it in their best, or my best interest as a business owner, but feel like everyone, like you guys and my administrative team and my employees, don't want to forget, the frontline employees are a big part of that too. I have the confidence and trust in everyone involved in my support network to continue to take the risk of being a business owner. And that's the strength behind it. If that was all gone, of course, in a second, this is my chance. See ya, car's broken, you can have it.
I think we did that. It was almost like a tea table. We didn't actually draw it out, but it was okay, we talked, what's the pros and the cons of selling? And it was just kind of wow, there's a heck of a lot more pros in keeping this thing than there are cons. And there's kind of, once you start laying out and you think of the bigger perspective, there's a lot more cons in selling now than the pros associated with it. So, and I still hope that you're going to pursue this journey of continuing to own it. So kind of on that topic though too, what we have in store right now, a big concern that you have is, the absence of the retirement. You're turning 40 this year. One of the things I've been telling you is, Moses, in our strategy sessions, Moses, let's stop making decisions like we're 30 and start making 40-year-old Moses decisions.
That was a big breakthrough. You'll see, it's written on the whiteboard in our shop, 30 or 40.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is this a 30-year-old decision or a 40-year-old decision?
And it's funny, Thomas and Caleb call me out on that all the time. You're 40 now, you need to be making 40-year-old decisions. It was just last year I was 30, but we're still making 40-year-old decisions there. But it's hard not to make impulsive decisions as a business owner. Often we're presented with challenges that feel immediate, and without strategy, it's almost like there's a decision that needs to be made right then and there. When we overlay the strategy onto business ownership and growth, then we can start making those more intentional plans to take that immediacy out of it.
You gotta remove the emotion at times.
Gotta remove the emotion. Still can have your heart in it.
Yes.
But don't want it to be forward-led by emotion, especially impulsive emotions.
Well, heart and gut. I think the heart and the gut are incredible. And everybody has, some people more heady, some people more gut focused, but leading with the heart attracts the employee base, resonates with it. Yeah. I've been leading more heady recently with my employee base, and we're getting. I got the email from Corey saying we got our Q12 in, and I'm excited to look at it, but I'm also just nervous at the same time. Because it's that reflection.
You have to have both of it. Yeah, I mean there has to be a balance. Because the heart without that forward-facing mindset, it's just going to kind of follow the excitement there. So,
but to your peace of mind too, this now next phase is operationally the business. You've already talked about this too. The business is humming operationally, right? You have the right people in, you got diversity. Even if some lucrative people end up stepping out for whatever reason, you've got an incredible base there, right? It's a humming machine. Even to the point where they're telling you not to show up, you still do. But like, if your interest is being able to like go out and start another business, like we talked about, like selling ice cream in downtown, you can run both. You don't have to have one or the other, right? And so when it comes to this particular business, leaning into that financial side of things, leaning into, you know, providing additional benefits to the employees, some of those more advanced efforts we're going to start wrapping our minds around is the retirement planning that you have.
We started that this year. We have a 5% match 401k, which is a big step for me as a business owner.
Exactly. So you got the 401k internally there. You know, I've connected you up with some financial planners, so getting a little bit more intentional about the makeup there. We want to start distributing it to that broader employee base. And, you know, one of the incentives or one of the pros that came with the sellout was retirement and health benefits, bigger retirement, bigger health benefits for the employee base. However, if we do that, then you remove the opportunity for Caleb and Thomas to buy in. So one of the things we've talked about too is literally starting to sell shares within the organization to give them truly ownership. 100%. They're psychological owners already. They're bought into you, but giving them mechanical or doing like an ESOP plan. So to be determined on what we do, that's what we're going to wrap our minds around in the immediate future. But you know, it's taking the pressure off of this, you have to sell now component.
100%. And it's always been my dream as a business owner to provide an experience of employee ownership. I mean, in the modern day workforce, there isn't a whole lot an employee has going for them other than their paycheck and maybe some benefits that come along with it. And they're the ones who make the business happen. And so like thinking back to my entire time up to the point I owned my business as an employee, and I always felt like there wasn't this next step invested in me as an employee. Like I want to provide that as an owner.
And it's totally synonymous with what the culture you've provided, the core that we've described from the beginning. You care deeply for your employee base, for the community, you know, for the environment. And so it's just continuing with that.
Yep, and it's going to be really exciting to watch that come to fruition this year. And that's where I need your help to navigate that. I have no idea, but we're setting that as our goal.
Wash, rinse, repeat. This has been the theme from the beginning. And I want to commend you for that too, and recognizing that at the beginning, and also trusting in me, trusting in my team. Like it's a big thing. Like we are talking heavy decisions. We're making big moves with your organization. You know, I know my price tag. I was thinking about it on the drive up here, right? From my perspective, my biggest purchase has been my house, right? Second, third, and fourth biggest purchases are my employees. You know, and it's like I was thinking, it was like, you know, from a business owner's perspective, you know, like to think about that is it's like, wow, you know, to put the much care as we do into our home and investment, like our biggest other purchases are our employee base. And you know, the bake in the middle for clients that Zebulon works with, the house is the first biggest purchase. Zebulon's the second. You know, and like we have that due care for you guys. And then it's the employees. And you think about the hundreds of thousands a year you spend on employees, and so again, giving it back to them as well. Well,
I mean, there's two options, right? It's either you're investing your time and energy or you're spending your time and energy. And I've always been a proponent of an investment, you know, like I hope one day soon all those investments will pay off and we can only spend our time and energy, but like investing in your business and in your growth and watching you move from a sole operator owner now into your employee base and watching your evolution. like I very much like kind of see your growth, and like we're working on it together. And it's been really fun to see that 100%. So
I think we said that years ago. Let's dominate this world together. We're still doing it.
Still doing it. And so, but yeah, the employees are a big part of that. I mean, I want everyone to have a successful future, and like, what speaks to it to the greatest level is we had 2 firstborns within our team, and now we have 2 secondborns on their way. So that's super exciting as well. And so that speaks highest to like just the feedback I get. If people are comfortable enough in life to take that next step in their families and in their contributions to the community and to their lives, then like that is what is the best feedback for me as a business owner. So really cool to see that.
Multi-generational business.
It is.
Here it comes.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I talk about it too, like we're making these decisions, like we have to put these 2 kiddos through college. I mean, I don't want to put like all that weight on me, but like now we have even more mouths to feed as a business. And so
you know, any kind of final thoughts too, just, you know, that are on your mind that you want to share, describe?
Final thoughts. That's a great question. I mean, it's okay to take risk with support.
Yeah.
It's like, and like as a business owner, like it's a risky, we put a lot of time, energy, and money into our investment of owning a business. And with that support aspect, with that knowledge, with that feedback, like, I don't know, like the QuickBooks thing, like all the number analyzation, that's not my strong suit. And like, if I can have support in that and delegate key responsibilities that I'm not prepared to take on or that wouldn't be successful for me to take on, then it makes it worth taking those risks. And so
Right people in the right place.
Right people, right place, 100%. Like, we'd all love to have your team as part of every business, right? And like, have like a whole huge, just as many administrators as there are producers. It would be incredible, but like that may not be feasible as a small business. So we can lean into your resources, and I can feel supported and guided and led, and we have a trajectory, and can take out loans because I can demonstrate anticipated cash balances and just have that backing, then I feel much more confident and less stress as a business owner. I mean, like ultimately it's reducing stress. And so if I can help delegate some of those stressors and I can get support in the stress that I need to hold, then I feel much more confident taking those risks.
We're reducing your stress as often in those meetings.
It's incredible.
You'll come in high strung sometimes, and by the end of it, you're just, whew.
We've had some tight months, and especially in the transition from like startup to mature business. And I think like we're taking those first like real strides as a mature business. Like, yeah, there's definitely some hard, like mainly like low cash balances, end of the winter, like how are we going to do this kind of conversations. And
that's so funny. It reminds me, there's been some of those like 30-year-old decisions that, you know, we're talking about Moses, 40-year-old decisions, right? You would go rogue when it came to cash balances, like expeditedly pay down debts or make big purchases, or like get excited about the bonus payouts that we had because cash was heavy. And I remember reminding you so many times, it was like, Moses, you should talk to me about before doing this, and this is what's going to happen because of that. And then it happened.
100%.
So now we're building up those cash, and part of that, you know, also talking to earlier is it's like we can lead with our heart, we can lead with our gut, but let's just not lead with the emotions. A lot of emotional purchases.
100%. Well, it's hard, you know, like it's boom and bust, or not so much bust on our end, but like it's hard not to see profitability and just look towards investing. And it's very important, like what I've learned, to invest in the right places. Like investing in your experience, awesome investment, wonderful returns, and investing in the right people and the right equipment, like very, very important. Part of it. So,
Well, cool. Thank you.
Nice, Zeb.
So we'll keep reducing stresses, buying you more time, more trips out, get you started on a ice cream business if we decide that ends up being the next venture. We'll keep driving up profitability and, you know, to a point earlier that was said too, investing in education in your team, because as you're investing in that, you know, no matter what's going to happen with the economy, no matter what's going to happen, broader anything else, we cannot take back that lesson learned. Whether you apply what you've have gone through with Zebulon and Momentum, or the ice cream business, or post-retirement, you will always have that experience with you.
Yeah, what a wonderful life to live. I'm so glad like this is a part of it. Something I always dreamed of. I mean, being an employee my whole life, I always dream of being a business owner. And then here I'm a business owner, and like, now what do I do? I've never done this before. And so really going to be exciting to see how this just continues to move forward.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Look forward to the next 7 years of this journey.
Me too.
Cool.
Should be a good time.